sensors, there's a variety of different types and sizes of sensors in digital SLRs. The two main types of sensor are CMOS and CCD, which you'll see in camera specifications. There are pros and cons and various characteristics of these sensors, but in practical terms it doesn't really make much difference what kind of sensor your camera has. What makes a bigger difference is the physical size of the sensor. Now, the main digital SLRs, the smallest physical sensor size is that you'll find in a 4/3 camera, such as the Olympus cameras and Panasonic cameras. Now, the 4/3 camera sensor is also a different aspect ratio to the other sensors in that it is a 4:3 ratio, which is a more square format than you'll get in most of the other digital SLRs, and is the same as what you get in most digital compact cameras. The most popular sensor size that used by most Nikon and Canon and Pentax and Sony cameras is what is referred to as APS-C sized, or in Nikon's case DX size sensors. Now, this sensor is smaller than the 35mm format but slightly larger than the 4/3 format, and it is a 3:2 aspect ratio, which is the same proportions as 35mm. Professional cameras have, or some professional cameras have, a full frame sensor such as this one, which is a sensor which is the same dimensions as 35mm film. Now, one of the benefits of a full frame sensor is that you can use your lenses from 35mm on these cameras, and the focal length remains exactly the same. If you use a lens from a full frame camera or from a 35mm camera on a digital SLR with a smaller sensor, what effectively happens is the image becomes cropped, because the sensor that's capturing the image is only capturing a smaller proportion of the image created by the lens. So in fact, a 50mm lens on 35mm SLR may be more equivalent to a 75mm by the time you've put it on a camera with an APS-C size sensor. Now, one of the most important aspects of a sensor is how many pixels it has, how many million pixels it has. A million pixels is called a megapixel, and most digital SLRs start at around 10 megapixel for an entry-level model, going up to about 24 megapixels for the highest resolution professional models. The average is probably around the 12 to 14 million pixel mark. Now, more pixels gives you more detail, more resolution, but you only really see the benefits of that if you're making very large prints. But there are drawbacks to more pixels too, because to get more pixels on the same size sensor there need to be smaller pixels, and by making the pixels smaller it becomes less efficient. Its ability to gather light becomes less good, if you like. So there's a risk of things like noise and other kinds of problems occurring from that. So when designing a sensor is a balance between fitting enough pixels on there to give you enough detail, but making the pixels large enough to give you the best image quality.